1 week from today will be election day, and we are winding up our series, our limited series of candidates. And our guest this week is Heather Holmes, who is a candidate for council person from the First Ward. And Heather, we welcome you.
Thank you so much, Jane. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. All right, let's start by introducing you to our viewers and voters and tell them about your background.
Absolutely. Well, as you said, my name is Heather Holmes, and I am running for City Council Ward 1. My background is economic development, and I'm a recovering journalist. I actually grew up in rural North Dakota, and I graduated high school with 8 individuals, 7 boys and myself. So it was a small group of individuals, and I learned a lot from that small town growing up. As I grew older, I went and joined the Army National Guard, and I was served there for 6 years as a diesel mechanic. That was another interesting experience that I believe has helped mold and create myself and my values today as well. As I work in economic development and throughout the region in Rochester, I'm having the opportunity to work on subjects such as regional transportation, transit, public affordable housing, and workforce shortages, which we have here with our low unemployment. I look forward to being a city council representative for Ward 1, because I think with my values and my experience, I can be a true representative and public servant for my Ward 1 neighbors and also for all the citizens of Rochester.
Now, our candidates are nonpartisan and focused on the city. How do you like that?
I think that's the way it should be. As we were talking a little bit before the show, what I really enjoy about that is there's no partisanship when we're talking about our parks. There's no partisanship when we're talking about public safety, when we think about our neighbors, when we think about our family. And it just poisons the well when we have work to do on a local level. By keeping that out of the conversation, we're allowing solutions, we're allowing different schools of thought, and we're embracing and communicating and collaborating. And that's what should be happening on a local level.
What made you decide to run for the city council?
Well, the first thing that made me decide actually was a visit with our current council representative, Ed Reska. I met with him in November, and once he confirmed he was retiring, I asked him if he thought that I would be a solid candidate, and he encouraged me, and he's currently supporting me as his candidate of choice for his replacement. And as we further conversated, I realized I volunteer a great deal, and this to me is a public servant position, and I would love nothing more to be a servant to the folks that I live next to and work next to every day. And that's why I'm running for city council, is to be that advocate and to be that person that they can count on.
Before I ask you your priorities, if you were elected, what would you say to the question, is there anything about the city that you'd like to change? Is there a reason that you think that you should serve on the council other than what you do going forward?
So I've lived in a number of places throughout the years. I've been here in Rochester for a decade with my family. And what that experience has brought me is this beautiful appreciation for the community we have. It really is a beautiful community. So when people ask me what I want to change about Rochester, quite often when I'm talking to neighbors, it's more about what we don't want to change than what we want to change. But what I would like to see is a little bit more civility on our council. I think we have room to grow and to behave responsibly and cordially when we're talking to folks. And I just see a little lack of decorum with some of that. And as our community is growing, we need to bring that back.
I think that's not unique to the city council this year, but I wish it were. The priorities that you'd like to look at in the order of importance?
Well, I look at it not necessary as order of importance, but what can we knock down feasibly and make a solution that might spread out. So I think about affordable housing. Okay, and affordable housing works in a way that we can cut out some of that red tape with our permitting process. So we like to say, oh, we have the big bad development happening and we need affordable housing. But you know, these folks are business owners. They need to make a living. And they're kind of getting chained with the permitting process and the red tape. That's completely unnecessary. We have technology and we have an antiquated system that we can fix, but that's getting all of our stakeholders at the table and looking at some of the technology we currently have that we're not using. The newest development of the Community Development Department, I think is a move in the right direction. And that's the kind of spider web effect. We fix some of that permitting process, shorten the length. That's going to save money. That's going to translate down to the cost of the home or cost of the property. And then we can really start having some good discussions about affordable housing.
Can you give us some examples of how the regulation is affecting the cost of building workforce housing?
Well, I've had many conversations with some of our local developers. And, you know, if you need a permit, say it's a plumbing permit or something in that respect, it can take up to 16 weeks for an electrical or a plumbing permit. That's fairly simple. And I've spoke to our assistant city administrator too, who's come from somewhere else and said that we have a very long wait for our permitting process. And this is not to say that we're bashing our city staff. We have excellent staffers that are doing the best they can, but this is something that we can improve on. 16 weeks for a simple permit shouldn't be happening. That costs money. You've got contractors tapping their foot, and tapping foots costs money when you're sitting on a site. And again, that's going to trickle down. We had a development in Ward 1 for a business, right? And the business was going to open in a week. Well, there was some issue all of a sudden with an external sign. So it was okay when they first did it, but then they came back and said, oh, we missed this. Okay, that's the kind of stuff, if you're leaving that to interpretation, now you have a week that you delayed. You have people who are going to work, who possibly made arrangements to get there, childcare arrangements, and now they don't get a paycheck for that first week, and they have to deal with whatever extra costs they incurred. Those are the things that we can fix just with our regulation and permitting process.
DMC has done a great job with market housing and building units that are market rate based. How do we switch gears to get people interested in affordable housing?
Well, I think those conversations are happening now more than they have. We've got the coalition. We've got the one project in my ward, Crossroads Campus, which I toured with Bear Creek Church that went and did the affordable housing there. And again, they had problems with permitting too, so that cost them some money. But I digress. I think that people are talking about affordable housing, and maybe it's a branding thing of how we're talking about it. We really need to have a blend of that market rate and that affordable housing. And that doesn't mean we're doing a handout. It means creating something that makes sense, that increases our tax base. If you've got people invested in the piece of property, they're going to take care of it. That's going to help with our market rate, and that's going to help our tax base because we've got more property owners that are coming into that base.
Okay. All right, besides affordable housing, your next priority.
Transportation, I think, is important. And again, I see transportation connecting with public safety. So when I look at transportation, I understand we don't want to add more vehicles to the road, but what we really need to consider is that vehicles are part of the makeup and DNA of our city. We have 1.2 million visitors that come into our community because of the Mayo Clinic and for healthcare purposes, and we can't begin to think that they're coming in on something other than their personal vehicle. So we have to take that into account. There's things I'd like to look at in regards to public transportation where we're getting out regionally so that we do have that ability to bring people in and out. So our roads need to be big enough for our buses so that we can fill those buses and have more frequent stops so that people can actually use them. But we have to remember that vehicles are going to be part of our transportation moving forward, and they have to be in the mix. That doesn't mean I'm against having accessible pedestrian and bike functionality. We have a beautiful bike trail system. You know, making sure we're continuing to connect that and build off of that, I think is great. But we have absolutely got to understand that congestion and vehicles have to be part of that conversation.
And Where do you start with that one?
So I really like adaptive signal technology. This is something I've been researching. Sioux Falls has done it, and Sioux Falls is moderately similar in size to Rochester. And they have done this for about, I think, 6-7 years. And basically what it is, it's part of being a smart city. The signals, the traffic signals, talk to each other. So when there's congestion, they tell the one ahead of them, you need to stay green so we can keep this moving. It reduces congestion, it reduces emissions, which means it's environmentally sound, and it reduces the option of vehicle-on-vehicle crashes or pedestrian vehicle crashes because of it moving the traffic through at this rate, and it's economical.
Would you do that citywide or just on the main corridors?
I would start with the most congestion, which would be looking at our downtown, getting in and out in the downtown proper section. But you don't have to do it citywide. That would probably not be cost effective or make much sense. But doing it, say, on our Broadway would be a good place to start, and maybe 2nd Street.
Okay, what other issues in public safety are important?
I met with Captain Sherwin probably about three months ago and had a conversation with him because I wanted to understand where they were coming from and how they were feeling. And this was right before they had named a police chief at that time. And you know, the discussion was a lot of the metrics. When you look at our metrics, we're actually doing pretty well. The numbers look very good in the past 10 years as far as where we're at as a safe community. That being said, where is the communication? Are we doing a good enough job with our police communicating with our neighborhoods and vice versa? Do they feel like they can have those conversations? The other piece of that, which I'm in the process of researching, is based on the size of our city, do we have the proper police force size? And my inclination is that we might be a little under what we need for police force, but that's something I'm investigating as well.
All right. And fire?
Fire is very important, obviously. We have our new fire marshal, which I have not, fire chief I have not met with, but I'm looking forward to connecting and learning more. But we absolutely have to have that as part of our public safety, especially as we're growing. We're going to have more buildings, we're going to have more housing, more structures that.
Now, capital expenditures. And the Post Bulletin was asking candidates as recently as last night in the paper whether they supported more work on the police development in Northwest Rochester, more on the public library and the parks. And where are you in that discussion?
So as I'm walking through the neighborhoods and talking to folks, a lot of the neighbors that I'm talking to have a keen interest in the public parks. And part of that is not just making sure they're clean, but making sure they're safe and that you don't maybe have some undesirable activity happening because it's you know, welcoming it, so to speak. So I see that part as a public safety piece, and that's what folks are telling me. So I want to make sure that I'm advocating and listening to what they're telling me. I've also heard the library has an HVAC system that needs to be fixed. So, I mean, there's just some things practicality-wise that we're going to have to address. And with the police, you know, that kind of comes back to what we just talked about. You know, that's part of a growing community. Right now, if I had to put them in a 1, 2, 3, it'd probably be, I think the parks is something that we could do possibly with help with our neighborhood associations as far as some funding, get a little creative. I think the police facility, that needs to have a strong priority. And the library, again, you know, maybe there's some grants or some funding elsewhere through federal or state that we might be able to tap into for that.
Would you like to comment on DMC?
I sure can. What? I mean, there's so much conversation and confusion with Destination Medical Center. I do have the opportunity to work with the individuals because of my affiliation with READY, Rochester Economic Development. And it's a good thing that we have the largest economic development initiative in the history of the state of Minnesota happening here. It's not happening in the Twin Cities, it's not happening in Duluth, it's not happening in New York City. You know, this is happening in our state and it's happening here. Do we need responsible growth? Of course we do. But this is going to keep us healthy and vibrant in a world, a health class or a healthcare destination for the world. And, it's a good thing, but we, as city council representatives, we have to be careful in watching on behalf of our taxpayers that things are happening responsibly and being fiscally frugal.
See, they really can't do anything downtown or otherwise without the council's approval.
Correct.
So the council has a very important role in the development. Have you been following the downtown portion, the heart of the city development?
I have been following it, yes, yes.
What do you think?
Well, it depends on, I guess, the project. So I know there's been a lot of conversation in regards to like the Lattice project and the Bloom project, and some of the questions or concerns that are raised in regards to tax increment financing. Tax increment financing it's a complicated, algorithm, but it's necessary when we're looking at creating development and creating growth and creating property tax that's going to be generated from that. So, I mean, I haven't studied all of the pieces, the ins and outs of these projects, but again, I think keeping an eye on what's happening, but remembering and understanding that the goal, I'd like to believe with DMC is they really want the city as a whole to rise up with them and not be left in the dust and just have this little mecca in downtown.
The city-county planning initiative is one that's received a great deal of attention lately. Where are you with that?
So I really think that the hybrid option that they came up with could work very well. I mean, there was 3 options. You completely separate the 2 departments. You leave it as is, or you go with this hybrid option that they decided on and approved. And I believe something had to be done and changed as we're evolving and growing as a city. I think it's going to actually work fairly well, but as we implement it, this is a big change. So the implementation piece, it needs to be done well and it needs to be done right. And the employees and the staff that's in the midst of this has to be on board and feel included in what's happening and understanding the process. Because if they're not on board and moving forward with it, we're going to be in trouble right from the very beginning.
Our friends in county government tell us also that we need to look more at the needs outside our city, to the smaller communities which house a lot of our workers. A lot of people commute into Rochester from these areas, so there are issues of transportation, public safety, and some of the infrastructure issues that affect our neighboring small communities who don't have the resources we do. Would you care to comment on that?
Well, with my work with Journey to Growth, which is a regional economic development initiative, I have the opportunity the past 4.5 years to visit with a lot of these communities. And I agree, when I look at what's happening nationally, we are stronger as a region than we are as just individual communities. So this is something I would absolutely agree with. For example, we just had a discussion with Pine Island, and they have tower properties. They have all the infrastructure in the ground where we could be welcoming a business, or more importantly, we could be welcoming some affordable housing. So then you have affordable housing in Pine Island, but how do you get the people to Rochester to work in that commuting piece? And that's where that public transit piece comes in. So we have to be communicating and working and collaborating together with our cities and communities that are around us in our county.
Okay. Now, those are my questions. What would you like to contribute as far as your priorities, and not just respond to questions?
Well, Jane, I always love your questions. You have the best ones. And I want to thank you for allowing me the opportunity to come on your show. I just really appreciate the time and the support that everyone has given me through this campaigning process. I feel passionate about serving. My motto is, if service is beneath you, leadership is beyond you. And I believe I have the values, the experience, the empathy, the compassion, and the competence to carry through what needs to be done for the Ward 1 citizens and for the citizens of Rochester. I'd be privileged if I was given that opportunity to represent the citizens. I ask for their vote on November 6th. Actually, I ask for it today because we have no excuse voting in Minnesota. So feel free to go out and vote as soon as possible. Just make sure you color in that box next to Heather Holmes.
One of the problems facing the community are employable people and workers. What can the council do to help with that situation?
I don't know exactly what the council specifically can do. Again, a lot of the work that I do in economic development and through Journey to Growth is talking about that workforce shortage. So we do a lot of work with communities and a lot of work with businesses that have had success or struggling with their workforce. I feel very strongly about educational opportunities and not just the baccalaureate track, but post-secondary certification, changing the stigma of what we can provide as far as pathways for careers. You can have a solid career in manufacturing, a solid career in ag. Not everybody has to be a doctor, though we need our doctors, of course. But there are a lot of opportunities, and I think if we look at education and supporting those pathways, CTEC and all of those opportunities, I think that's a good place to start. So is that City Council specifically? I don't know, but at the very least, they could be a partner in that conversation.
The city of Rochester has a historic and illustrious past with the public supporting private industry, private arts, the Civic Theater, the Symphony Orchestra, the Art Center, now I-25 Live, and the Castle Project. We have some support interest there. The Chateau. Talk to us about how we can afford to keep doing that.
It's interesting. I haven't honestly given that one as much thought with all the other questions that have come down. I believe that we need the arts in our organizations in our city. I believe that's a huge piece about our quality of life here. But helping ensure that they are independent and able to thrive on their own financially, I think, is incredibly important. I don't know how we dig into that and see how that can work, but I think that that's something that we have to review. The Chateau was a very expensive project for the city, and it will continue to be so. But I'd like to look at these as investments, and if they are an investment, what is our ROI with that investment? And I believe that that's something that's getting more attention, and people are having that conversation a lot more. I'm seeing it anyways.
Okay. I want to give you a chance to have a closing statement to our viewers and voters, and just take a couple of minutes and talk to them.
Great. Well, I kind of feel like I did it a little bit earlier, but I really, really do feel passionate about public service. I have been a volunteer for the 10 years that I've been in this community, and I love this community, whether I'm working or whether I'm volunteering. The network of individuals that I've had the ability to get to know and work side by side or volunteer with, I believe allows me the opportunity to fully represent all of the people of Rochester and my Ward 1 citizens. So I'm just asking folks to give me that opportunity. I would be privileged to represent you. I would love the opportunity to do so. So again, I'm asking for your vote on November 6th or earlier.
And one last question. The Civic Center is obviously looking for help. There's been a proposal by the city administrator to put together Experience Rochester, the board that governs the Civic Center. What do you think about that?
I would be interested in learning a little bit more. Again, when I see something that is struggling or there's trouble or it's not working, I do believe you have to take a look at it and look at some alternatives, right? If it's not working, it's kind of the old thing. If you hit your head against the wall and you do it 2-3 times, you expect a different reaction or a different result, that doesn't make any sense. So I do think that we, taking a look and seeing if there's an alternative that makes more sense. And I think that's what our city administrator is doing. He's got ideas and he's done some things outside before he's come to this community. So I'm cautiously optimistic with the ideas that he's coming forward, and I think it's an opportunity for us to look at and say, maybe there's something here.
How would you look at working with the other members of the city council?
Well, I would look forward to working with them. There's a lot of experience already on the council that I would very much, and I've spoke with quite a few of them that have given me some of that advice and mentorship, as I mentioned with Ed Ruska, for one, who's 17 years. And, part of it is creating this collaborative team effort. And I think at the end of the day, we all really want the same thing. But sometimes we get a little married to maybe an issue, and we have to remember that the issue is not the person, and that the overall good of the community is what we're all looking for, and trying not to pin that issue onto a person, because that's a slippery slope of negativity.
Okay, do you have any other issues you'd like to present?
I don't really have any issues. Again, I think we have a great community. I'd love to represent it. I'd love to serve it, and hope the voters agree with me.
And in 1 week, we're going to urge you all to be sure and have voted by this time next week. And we thank you for coming, and we were having your opponent a week ago, Patrick Keene, and we wish you lots of luck.
Thank you, Jane.
All right. Thank you, our viewers, for being with us this week. We'll be with you next week, same time, same channel. Have a very good week and a very good night.